which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection.
14.2 Idam Gyanam Upashritya Mama Sadharmayam Agataha Sarge Apinopajayante Pralayena Vyathanti cha.
By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to be transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution.
Mama Yonir Mahad Brahma Tasmin Garbham Dadhamyaham Sambhavah Sarvabhutanam Tato Bhavati Bharata.
The total material substance, called Brahman, is a source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata.
14.4 सर्वयोनिषु कौन्तेय मूर्तय सम्भवन्ति यः तासां ब्रह्म महद्योनिर् अहं बीजप्रदः पिता.
It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by the birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed giving father.
14.5 सत्वं रजस्तम इति गुणाः प्रकृतिसम्भवाः निबध्नन्ति महाबाहो देहे देहिनाम् अव्ययम्.
Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes.
14.6 तत्र सत्त्वं निर्मलत्वात् प्रकाशकम् अनाम्ययम् सुखसङ्गेन बध्नाति ज्ञानसङ्गे सङ्गेन चानघः.
O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from the sinful recitations. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge.
14.7 रजोरागात्मकं विद्धि तृष्णासङ्गसमुद्भवं तन्निबध्नाति कौन्तेय कर्मसङ्गे सङ्गेन देहिनम्.
The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti, and because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions.
14.8 तमस्त्व अज्ञानजं जं विद्धि मोहनं सर्वदेहिनां प्रमादालस्य निद्राभिस्तन्निबध्नाति भारत.
O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul.
14.9 सत्वं सुखे संजयति रजः कर्मणि भारत ज्ञानम् आवृत्य तु तमः प्रमादे संजयत्य उत.
O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. Passion conditions one to fruitive action, and ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to madness.
14.10 रजस्तमश्चाभिभूय सत्वं भवति भारत रजः सत्वं तमश्चैव तमः सत्वं रजस्तथा.
Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance, O son of Bharata. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats the goodness and ignorance, and at other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy.
14.11 सर्वद्वारेषु देहेऽस्मिन् प्रकाश उपजायते ज्ञानं यदा तदा विद्यात् विवृद्धं सत्वम् इत्य उत.
The manifestations of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge.
14.12 लोभः प्रवृत्तिरारम्भः कर्म कर्मणाम् असमः स्पृहः रजस्य एतानि जायन्ते विवृते भरतर्षभ.
O chief of the Bharatas, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop.
14.13 अप्रकाशो प्रवृत्तिश्च प्रमादो मोह एव च तमस्य एतानि जायन्ते विवृधे गुरुनन्दन.
When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, O son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifested.
14.14 यदा सत्त्वे प्रवृद्धे तु प्रलयं याति देहभृत् तदोत्तमवेदां लोकान् अमलान् प्रतिपद्यते.
When one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets of the great sages.
14.15 रजसि प्रलयं गत्वा कर्मसङ्गीषु जायते तथा प्रलीनास्तमसि मूढयोनिषु जायते.
When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities. And when one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom.
14.16 कर्मणास् शुक्रतस्याहु सात्विकं निर्मलं फलं रजसस्तु फलं दुःखम् अज्ञानं तमसः फलम्.
The result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness. But action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness.
14.17 सत्त्वत् सञ्जयते ज्ञानं रजसो लोभ एव च प्रमादमोहौ तमसो भवतो ज्ञानमेव च.
From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, greed develops. And from the mode of ignorance, develop foolishness, madness, and illusion.
14.18 ऊर्ध्वं गच्छन्ति सत्त्वस्था मध्ये तिष्ठन्ति राजसः जघन्यगुणवृत्तिस्था अधो गच्छन्ति तामसः.
Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets. And those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds.
14.19 नान्यं गुणेभ्यः कर्तारां यदा द्रष्टानुपश्यति गुणेभ्यश्च परं वेत्ति मद्भावं सो अधिगच्छति.
When one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to all the modes, he attains my spiritual nature.
14.20 गुणान् एतान् अतीत्य देहि देह समुद्भवान् जन्म मृत्यु जरा दुःखैः विमुक्तो अमृतम् अश्नुते.
When the embodiment being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life.
14.21 अर्जुन उवाच कैरलिङ्गैस्त्रीन् गुणान् एतान् अतीतो भवति प्रभो किम् अचारः कथं चैतांस् त्रीन् गुणान् अतिवर्तते.
Arjuna inquired, O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior, and how does he transcend the modes of nature?
Text 14.22 to 25. Shri Bhagwan Uvaj. Prakasham cha pravritim cha moham eva cha pandava न द्वेष्टि सम्प्रवृत्तानि न निवृत्तानि काङ्क्षति उदासीन वदासीनो गुणर्यो न विचाल्यते गुणा वर्तन्त इत्य एवं यो वतिष्ठति नेङ्गते समदुःख सुख स्वस्थ समलोष्टास्मकाञ्चनः तुल्यप्रिया प्रियो धीरस् तुल्यनिन्दात्मसंस्तुतिः मानपमानयोस्तुल्यस्तुल्यो मित्रारिपक्षयो सर्वारम्भपरित्यागी गुणातीतः स उच्यते.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon the lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal towards the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friends and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities, such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature.
14.26 मां च यो व्याभिचारेण भक्तियोगेन सेवते सगुणान् समतीत्यैतान् ब्रह्मभूयाय कल्पते.
One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman.
14.27 ब्रह्मणो हि प्रतिष्ठाहम् अमृतस्य व्यस्य च शाश्वतस्य च धर्मस्य सुखस्यैकान्तिकस्य च.
And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness.
ओम तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यं योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्ण अर्जुन संवादे गुणत्रय विभाग योग नाम चतुर्दशो अध्यायः. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much, Sanchi Mataji. Thank you, Amit Prabhu. Wonderful recitation of the Sanskrit and English too.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Today we'll be reading text number 8. So we'll start off by saying the Mangala Charanam prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacharya Shrila Prabhupada ki jai. So today we continue reading chapter number 14, entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature. As we were hearing from the recitation, this is a very, very important chapter. Lord Krishna says that one who is able to understand this knowledge, he becomes free from the entanglement of the material world. In these three series of verses, verse 6, 7, and 8, the Lord is giving a more detailed description about the nature of each of these modes. In text number 6, Krishna says, O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. The important word used there is conditioned. Although it all seems very nice, illuminated, pure, and so on, but still one is conditioned. Conditioned meaning still trapped within the material world. Then in text number 7, Krishna has described the mode of passion. And the Lord describes the mode of passion as being born of unlimited desires and longings. O son of Kunti, and because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive activities. Again, Krishna is saying this mode of passion is binding the living entity, and it is born out of unlimited desires and longings. And how amazing it is to hear this, that how today's society, practically everything that we witness and observe and endure in our lives tries to increase our longings and desires. There's advertisements everywhere we go. Nowadays, even the phone we cannot escape. If you watch a YouTube video, every video will have 3 or 4 advertisements, trying to somehow or the other increase our longings. And in today's verse, text number 8, the Lord is describing now the mode of ignorance. What is the nature of this mode of ignorance? Tamastu ajana jam vidi mohanam sarvadehinam pramadhalasya nidrabhisthanibhadrati bharata. O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of these modes are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In this verse, the specific application of the word to is very significant. This means that the mode of ignorance is a very peculiar qualification of the embodied soul. The mode of ignorance is just the opposite of the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, by development of knowledge, one can understand what is what. But the mode of ignorance is just the opposite. Everyone under the spell of the mode of ignorance becomes mad. And a madman cannot understand what is what. Instead of making advancement, one becomes degraded. The definition of the mode of ignorance is stated in the Vedic literature. Vastu yat atmyam atmya janavarakam viparyaya jnana janakam tamaha. Under the spell of ignorance, one cannot understand a thing as it is. For example, everyone can see that his grandfather has died, and that therefore he will also die. Man is mortal. The children that he conceives will also die. So that is sure. Still, people are madly accumulating money and working very hard all day and night, not caring for the eternal spirit. This is madness. In their madness, they are very reluctant to make advancement in spiritual understanding. Such people are very lazy. When they are invited to associate for spiritual understanding, they are not much interested. They are not even active like the man who is controlled by the mode of passion. Thus, another symptom of one embedded in the mode of ignorance is that he sleeps more than is required. 6 hours of sleep is sufficient, but a man in the mode of ignorance sleeps at least 10 or 12 hours a day. Such a man appears to be always dejected and is addicted to intoxicants and sleeping. These are the symptoms of a person conditioned by the mode of ignorance. So it's a very beautiful verse and purport by Srila Prabhupada. And if we read these verses, we can see that this describes a lot of what we see in the population of the world today, and even sometimes in our own existence. The beautiful thing about this knowledge, aspect of this knowledge, is by hearing and understanding, we can ourselves understand when we are becoming overcome by the mode of ignorance. As Krishna will describe in the subsequent verses, it's not that one is always situated in a particular mode of nature. Krishna says there's always competition among the modes. Sometimes the mode of goodness may predominate. Sometimes the mode of passion may predominate. And sometimes the mode of ignorance will predominate. Those who are on the spiritual path, Srila Prabhupada explains, should at least be situated in the mode of goodness. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada describes the mode of goodness as the springboard to the platform of Krishna consciousness. If one is in the mode of goodness, then we can elevate ourselves. So we have to be very conscious of these modes. So we'll discuss a bit more, in particular about the three characteristics that Srila Prabhupada talks about. And in this verse, three characteristics are predominant: madness, laziness, and sleep. So Srila Prabhupada gives a very interesting definition of madness. Prabhupada says madness means under the spell of ignorance, one cannot understand a thing as it is. Meaning we cannot see reality. And Srila Prabhupada gives the very common example that a person can see around themselves that everyone is dying. And we have some level of awareness that we are also going to die. But the people act as if they don't die. That means one cannot understand the reality of life. Therefore, in Krishna consciousness, one of the qualities of knowledge is described as always being conscious of the fact of death. That we should not be covered. The word for madness is pramada. That one is mad, one cannot really see things as they are. And today we can see that in so many different aspects, that people take what is ignorant to be what that is true. One common example is within the scientific community is the theory of evolution. People just accept that as fact without really um, questioning or understanding. How can a whale become a mammal or become an animal? That's called macroevolution. People just do not understand. They just think maybe it's probable, it's possible, but they do not question our probabilities. So this is very common, madness. The next quality is laziness. Um, People are very lazy in this Kali Yuga. And the Bhagavatam, when the characteristics of Kali Yuga is described by Shukadev Goswami, one of the characteristics is that people are always lazy. Any opportunity to flop on the sofa, they take. Any opportunity to avoid work, people will take that. It's very hard. People are very lethargic in this mode of nature. They can't function. It's really difficult. And the last quality is the quality of sleep. Prabhupada said 6 hours of sleep is enough. One can just consider if we sleep for 6 hours. Some people sleep for 8 hours. Some people sleep for 12 hours. There's 24 hours in a day. That means if we sleep for 12 hours, half of our life we are sleeping. If we sleep for 6 hours, then quarter of our lives we're sleeping. The body certainly needs sleep to rejuvenate. And if we do not sleep enough, there's sufficient evidence to indicate that there'll be difficulties in life. The body needs to rejuvenate. But on the spiritual path, one has to limit one's sleep. Just like in the process of Krishna consciousness is advocated that one rise early in the morning and then one practices one's activities of sadhana. If one is too addicted to sleeping, then it's very, very difficult to get up early to practice one's spiritual life. Among the living entities, there are other living entities like trees, that practically they are in a state of sleep for most of their life. Therefore, the trees are considered to be in the mode of ignorance. So those people that are sleeping too much, certainly is not, they fall into the mode of ignorance. Even ourselves, we know sometimes if we oversleep and we get up, we're very groggy, we're very disillusioned, disheveled, we cannot get our bearings right. So oversleeping is not conducive for spiritual life. When Srila Prabhupada first went to America on the Jaladuta, he wrote a poem. And in this poem, he writes, he looks from the ship he's sailing into. He looks out into the American skyline and he sees all of these buildings and he sees what's going on. And he prays to Krishna and he asks Lord Krishna, he says, I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? And then Prabhupada writes, most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they will be able to understand it. In the purport, when Srila Prabhupada is describing laziness, Srila Prabhupada writes that people are in a mode of ignorance. They have not much inclination to attend any discourse on spiritual life. It's very hard for them. And even if they come and sit in some class, very quickly they'll fall asleep. Very quickly they'll fall asleep. Then Prabhupada says, but I know your causeless mercy can make everything possible because you are the most expert mystic. How will they understand the mellows of devotional service, O Lord? I am simply praying for you, for your mercy, so that I will be able to convince them of your message. So this was Srila Prabhupada's almost impossible mission. He was going to a foreign country where most of the people were in the mode of passion or ignorance. They had no inclination to hear about the messages of Krishna or the transcendental topics. They were very much in the mode of sleeping and laziness. And yet Srila Prabhupada was given the mission to take Krishna consciousness to them. So these words express very nicely Srila Prabhupada's thoughts. And he says, how will they understand? And he says, all living entities have become under the control of your illusionary energy by your will. And therefore, if you like, by your will, they can be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. Therefore, if you desire their deliverance, then only they will be able to understand your message. And then Prabhupada says, the words of Srimad Bhagavatam are your incarnation. And if a sober person repeatedly receives it with submissive oral reception, then he will be able to understand your message. The influence of the modes of ignorance and passion, and thus all inauspicious things accumulated in the core of their heart will disappear. So one of our great acharyas, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sings, Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole. He says, oh sleeping souls, oh sleeping souls, oh sleeping souls, please awake. For so long you have been sleeping in the lap of the witch of Maya. Now please hear the message of Lord Gora Chandra and awake from your sleeping state. It's a beautiful song he sings. Maybe next time we can hear it. What Srila Prabhupada explains in his poem is very interesting. And it gives us a clue of how, if we ever find ourselves being influenced by the mode of passion and ignorance, how we can come out of it. And Srila Prabhupada in this poem, he refers to texts 17 to 21 from the second chapter of Canto 1 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And these verses, many of you all know, many of you all have heard it, but I'll read it again just to remind ourselves. It's the verses Shrinvata Swakatam Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanam Hridayantasto Abhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. So he writes, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, the super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So the first point made by this verse is that the Lord is situated within all of our hearts, and he is our real benefactor. And when he notices that someone has developed some urge to hear his messages, immediately the Lord takes action and he personally cleanses the heart of such a person. Then it goes on to say, this is the verse, Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevanam. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of services to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving services unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and rendering service to the devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart, the mode of passion and ignorance, it's destroyed. And then as soon as irrevocable devotional service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, anchoring, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind, which has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord, gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada describes these 4 verses as the process of liberation from the modes of passion and ignorance. And how does this process work? Very simply. We develop some urge to listen. Krishna detects the urge to listen. He becomes favorably disposed to us. He enters our heart and he cleanses it. As the heart becomes cleansed, we develop more affinity to hearing. By hearing and serving the devotees, more of the unwanted things become destroyed in the heart. And then what happens then? Then one performs devotional service. And when one performs devotional service, the effects of the mode of passion and ignorance, they disappear from the heart. And as soon as these effects of the mode of passion and ignorance disappear, then the mode of goodness becomes completely, one becomes happy. And then from the modes of goodness, Prabhupada writes, the mode of unalloyed goodness, pure goodness, becomes established. And then we become completely enlivened with devotional service. And Prabhupada says we gain scientific knowledge and we become completely free from all material association. So in one sense, it seems like such a simple process, but it's so effective. Therefore, Prabhupada says the devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement, we should force into the ear holes of the population this message of Krishna. He says the message of Urukrama. We have to somehow or the other give them this message by the distribution of transcendental literature and by Harinam Sankirtan. And not only for others, for our own self. As long as we are constantly hearing Krishna Katha, as long as we are performing devotional service, as long as we are serving the pure devotees of the Lord, one can never be touched by the mode of passion and ignorance. And Prabhupada says if everybody could simply accept the simple formula, then we'll see a transformation of the world. This mode of ignorance, it can be completely eradicated. This was one nice verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, spoken by Lord Krishna to Uddhava, where the Lord says, when one's higher awareness fails and finally disappears, and one is thus unable to concentrate his attention, his mind is ruined and manifests ignorance and depression. you should understand that this situation to be the predominance of the mode of ignorance. When we lose awareness of what our real nature is. Prabhupada said, if simply every day, every moment we can think, I am the eternal servant of Krishna. And to always be aware of the simple fact that my real nature is that I am the eternal servant of Krishna. And as far as possible, one tries to act in that position. The modes of passion and ignorance, they will never be able to affect and touch us. So this is very, very beautiful knowledge. And in the rest of the chapter, I don't want to jump across the upcoming verses, but more and more details of this is given. So I'll stop here. It's almost past. I will take any questions, comments, or reflections that anyone may have.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Meena Mataji.
I just want, you said pure goodness. What is
Yeah.
the process? What is the pure goodness of you said goodness and pure goodness. What is the difference?
What's the difference between goodness and pure
Yeah.
goodness?
So how one can go attain pure goodness? Is there
The main
process?
difference, the essential difference is in the mode of pure goodness. One is conscious of one's position as servant of Krishna, and one is situated in the platform of devotional service. The mode of goodness is one cannot even, or may not even necessarily be a devotee. One can just be a good person, living a very sattvic life, eating sattvic food. And you get many people today. Often I read about people, they live in the country, they live simply, they're vegetarian, their habits are very clean, and they're kind, and they're peaceful, but there's no Krishna in their life. There's no Krishna in their life. But those who are in the platform of devotional service, as we have been reading here, Krishna removes the influence of the modes of nature. Krishna removes the conditioning. One can even become conditioned by a sense of happiness. And we see this in the Vedic tradition, that this is sometimes quite prevalent. People just become conditioned by the mode of goodness, and they think that they're very well situated. But that's not good enough. That's still conditioned state. So the distinguishing factor is conscious awareness of one's position as servant of Krishna, and then active engagement in the service, devotional service of Guru and Krishna. That is the main difference. It may seem similar, but there is a gulf of difference. And actually, it is said that one is conditioned by a sense of happiness in the mode of goodness. When one compares the happiness in the mode of goodness with the happiness that comes from the mode of pure goodness, the happiness in the mode of pure goodness far surpasses the so-called happiness in the mode of goodness. Does that answer your question, Meena Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, very nice. Yes, I know difference between pure. Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any other questions, comments, or reflections? Okay, someone has got a comment here, Santosh Mataji. Hare Krishna. Very nice class. Are the three modes connected or linked to the soul in any way? No, Mataji. The soul has nothing to do with the material world and the material nature. As Krishna says so many times in the Bhagavad Gita, the soul is separate. But when the soul comes under the influence of the false ego and the mind, then the false soul thinks it's connected, or it feels it's connected to the three modes. Like when one is in the mode of ignorance, one may think, I am a lazy person. I am not very intelligent. But the soul is not like that. It's just under the influence of the mode of the false ego and the mind. One thinks like, I am a lazy person, but the soul is not lazy. The soul is not mad. The soul is transcendental, but by the influence of the modes and the false ego and the mind, it thinks it's connected. But in reality, it has no connection with any of these things. Does that answer your question, Santosh Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Any
Krishna.
other reflections, questions, or comments?
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Okay, Kushal Mataji, you go first, and then after that, I just missed who else
Okay.
was saying.
I was just thinking, Prabhuji,
Yes.
We are all influenced by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. So even as a devotee, we would still be influenced by the three modes. So like sometimes, okay, ideally you should sleep for 6 hours, but to be honest about myself, there are days when you don't get up and you just want to snuggle in a bit more. So that I know would be in the mode of ignorance. So we do activities in the mode of ignorance, passion, and goodness. Is that right?
Yes, just a couple of interesting points to make in connection with your question. The first thing is there will come a stage in one's spiritual life where one is completely free from the modes. Definitely at the stage of bhava, one is free from the modes of nature, completely free. And in the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami lists the 6 characteristics of the stage of bhava. And one of the characteristics is that one does not waste any time when one is in such a state. So firstly, there will come a stage in our spiritual life where we will become free. But Prabhupada gave a very interesting analogy when one devotee once asked him, are the sadhakas, the practitioners, are they influenced by the modes of nature? Prabhupada gave a very interesting analogy. He said sometimes we will be in a boat in the sea, and the boat will be rocked by the waves. But because one is in the boat, one will not become swept away. People who are not in the platform of devotional service, that means practicing devotional service, like all of us are. Those who are practicing devotional service, they are like in the boat. So sometimes the boat may be rocked a little bit from time to time. But if you are in the boat, you will not be swept away. Those who are not devotees of the Lord, they can be swept away by the modes of nature. Whereas the devotees of the Lord, from time to time, you were just saying, sometimes I just, get a little bit under the influence. But you recover from it. You get back on track with your spiritual life like that. So that is the difference between the sadhakas and ordinary people who are not in devotional service. We are in the devotees are they're in the boat of the transcendental boat of Krishna consciousness. So even if there's some rocking, because we're still in the material ocean, there's bound to be some rocking, but the position is much more secure. Much more secure. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. Nice to know at least the position is secure.
Yes, there is The position of devotional service is always secure. Always secure.
Thank you.
Hare
I
Krishna.
have a quick question for you.
Yes, Chandrika Mataji.
So you mentioned just now the characteristics of Baba, the one about the boat. If you can, maybe not to now, but perhaps afterwards, can share the other characteristics, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I'll share it after the class.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
The soul is covered by the three modes of material nature. But when the soul is transcendental, but when the soul leaves the body,
Mhm.
does it resume its original transcendental nature, or is it still covered because it goes in another body?
Because one is still in the material world, if one is not Krishna conscious, right? And one is transmigrating through the normal process of transmigration. The transmigration takes place in whatever way one is transmigrating within the material world. So that mode one carries with one, the soul carries it, like the influence, like the scent still stays with one. And that carries one to the next body. Like those are to become trees. Prabhupada says, if you are too attached to sleeping, you become a bear in your next lifetime. If you're too attached to being naked, you become a tree. You know, this picture's in the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So those modes carry one to the next body. And one gets situated in that mode that one is attached to. So the effect carries on. It takes one to the next body.
Right. So people who are in Krishna conscious, I mean, we are just aspiring at the moment. We are not even, fully, developed devotees. What happens to us?
Krishna explains all of that in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says that those who start the process of Krishna consciousness, but who are unfortunately unable to complete the process, they take off from where they left off, and he gives them birth in a family of either wealthy people or pious brahmanas, so that one can continue to progress from where you left off. So if one is perfectly Krishna consciousness, then we don't take birth. But if we are like, say, semi-Krishna conscious, 50% Krishna conscious, then we will take off from the point of 50% in our next life. Krishna will place us in a family or in a position by which we can continue from where we left off in our last life. That is Krishna's special gift to the devotees.
Yes.
His special gift to those who make some endeavor and effort to practice and to follow his instructions in this life.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Mataji.
In that case, what about our karmas and our desires that at the end of our life?
So say, suppose you are a devotee,
Yeah.
right? And you have some desires when you die. You are not perfectly free of desires, but you started practicing Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
So Krishna will place you in a situation where he will help you to become free from those desires. In your path, in your progress to move forward. As long as you have that desire to become free, you have the desire to serve him, Krishna will make some personal arrangements, either to help you fulfill the desire, and then you can see, I had this desire, I experienced this desire, it really was nothing much to give me happiness. You become free through experiencing it. Or Krishna will make some arrangement that he will kill the desire without you even experiencing it. He helps. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, I give them, I preserve what they have, and I carry to them what they lack. So Krishna preserves what Krishna consciousness you have.
Preserve, yes.
Yes, he preserves that, and he carries to you what you lack. That's what he says in the Gita. Does
Yeah.
that answer your question, Mataji?
Yes, perfectly.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Hare,
Um,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Pramila Mataji.
So Prabhuji, so if someone is in the mode of passion mainly, and then develops something like Alzheimer's or some form of mental impairment, does that mean to say he then goes into the mode of ignorance?
Because of their sleeping and so on.
No, sorry, because of the Alzheimer's or
No,
dementia.
no, not necessarily so. There was recently a very nice story I read. There was one disciple of Srila Prabhupada's, and she did some nice service for Srila Prabhupada. And she suffered from Alzheimer's disease.
Mhm.
And she was put into a care home. But miraculously, she lost all her faculties, but she never forgot the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. She was still able to always chant the Mahamantra. And when I read this, what really astounded me and gave me so much of faith that Krishna never forgets his devotees. No matter what material circumstances that are there to prevent physical conditions, the consciousness Krishna preserves. And Krishna somehow or the other helps the devotees. So it depends, Mataji. It's not like a cut and dry rule. It's not necessarily that one will go if one is always sleeping. One goes into a physical state. Like sometimes it may happen to us, and we see sometimes even in devotees that at the end of life, practically they are asleep most of the time. You go and you see somebody, and most of the time the devotees sleep, and sometimes they get up. Does that mean that the devotee now, if we read this verse of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says lazy, sleeping? Oh, okay. I think this devotee has fallen into the mode of ignorance. No, it doesn't work like that for the devotees. And sometimes, one who is mentally active, externally the body may be in a different state, but internally they are different. The consciousness is different. So it's difficult to make generic judgments. These are just some of the symptoms. But if a person, I think one has to look at the overall quality of their life, the overall type of person they were before really seeing in which state of consciousness they are.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Jolly Mataji.
Um, I'm just thinking about some people living in the world where they don't know about Krishna consciousness,
Yes.
but they have practiced goodness, and because they realize their mind's been agitated, it's been flickering from to and fro, very unsteady mind, and they decided they don't find happiness in that, and so to find happiness they decided to be calm, control the mind in a different way, and be kind to each other, just practice goodness. And I mean, like some yogis, they're not Krishna conscious, are they? All the yogis that is labeled yogis.
True.
So how can they reach this transcendental state and be happier? I mean, I just think that some of them seem to promote or prevail in happiness. Is that so? Has it got to be with Krishna?
Well,
If they're not aware of Krishna?
Definitely, Mataji, they have a sense of happiness. But, in the Bhagavatam, if you read the first canto, the sages of Naimisharanya asked Sutta Goswami, what is the ultimate good for all people? And Sutta Goswami he replied, Savai pumsa paro dharmo yato bhakti adokshaje ahaituki apratiyata yayatma suprasidati. To completely satisfy the self, one must be situated in devotional service. And that devotional service should be unmotivated and uninterrupted. So there are different states of happiness. For the soul, the ultimate, like Sani Prabhupada gives the example of a crying baby. The baby is crying, and the baby gets passed from one lady to the other. And the lady rocks the baby, and the baby somewhat soothes itself, but still it's whining and moaning, and it's never like completely happy. Only when it comes to the arms of his mother, then it feels, yes, now I am resting in my original place, and it's happy. So for the soul, it's like that, it can travel and traverse through so many different situations. It may develop some sense of peace or some sense of happiness, but that true, completely satisfying, ultimate happiness only comes when it becomes situated at the lotus feet of Krishna. Prabhupada gives the analogy like a fish. Well, must get the fish out of water. You can take it out of water, you can give it this, that. The fish will not, only when you put it back in its original environment, it feels. So it's like that for the soul too.
Yeah.
So in the mode of goodness, yes, there's some, the other yogi, yes, there's some peace, there's some happiness, but it's not yayatma suprasidati. Only in devotional service is that achieved. Does that answer your question, Jody?
Well, I'm thinking of devotional service, being serving the people around you. Doesn't matter if they're devotees or Vaishnavas. It's just that they're, especially if they're needy, that's serving, isn't it?
Yes.
That's my point. I'm actually thinking some of these yogis, okay, they do worship demigods or some kind of gods that draw them to Krishna eventually. So it might take lifetimes to get there. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out. It's
yes,
so
it
complex.
may take it may take them lifetimes. Krishna says, like you can do many good deeds. There are many people, they open hospitals, they open care homes, they feed the hungry. Krishna says, what happens to those people? They develop stacks and stacks and heaps of punya. And what happens in their next life? They get the benefit of that punya. They go to the heavenly planets. And they enjoy, they may take birth as Queen Elizabeth. They enjoy that punya. But it's still within the cycle of birth and death. Krishna says, I don't interfere with your karma. You do good, you get good karma. You do bad, you get bad. And you'll just carry on independent of me, separate from me. That's the life. And you will experience different stages of so-called happiness. But must remember that the soul, as Krishna says in the 13th chapter, the soul has nothing to do with any of this. It's only the influence of the mind and the false ego that is creating the sense of happiness and distress. You've got to touch the soul. You've got to come back to the Atma. That's what Krishna is emphasizing time and time again in the Gita.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm at that platform where I'm a bit impatient. I want to get there quicker than what the stages are. The levels. I'm actually building my own scaffold that gets me there a bit quicker, which is not probably the best idea. Is to take the scaffolding in a very strong, concrete way.
Rupa Goswami says, Nischayan, Utsahan, Nischayan, Dairyat. Patience.
Yes.
Patience. Dairyat is, we need patience.
And we need it in book distribution, don't we? Otherwise we get nowhere.
Yeah, that's the quick way of getting there. That's your scaffold. Yeah.
Yes, excellent.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So there's one question here from Shobhana Mataji. How does our devotional service transfer to next life, please? How does it transfer to the next life? The impressions of our devotional activities, they stay with us. They stay with us. Like say, suppose we like being in the kirtan. Firstly, it's what it stripped us of all of the anarthas. Those anarthas leave us. And secondly, those positive impressions. One next lifetime, we just automatically attracted to kirtan, we attracted to prasadam, we attracted to hearing about Krishna. That's how it stays with us in our next life, in terms of the impressions it creates, and in terms of the anarthas we become stripped of.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Supana Mataji.
Does the soul have any sense?
Yes, it has spiritual senses. The soul has spiritual senses according to the Vaishnava literature.
Right. And when do these senses get activated?
When one gets situated at the stage of prema, one becomes situated in one's. We have a material body now, but each of us also has a spiritual body. That spiritual body has spiritual senses, but now it's all been compressed into a very, very tiny seed. When we become stripped of the false ego and all of the material entrapments, then the spiritual body will completely manifest. At the stage of prema, that spiritual body manifests, and all of the spiritual senses manifest with that spiritual body.
Okay. Now, at what point does the soul get this longing for Krishna? What is that stage?
Well, every one of us who are on the path of bhakti, we have some, it may be very small, but there is some longing, because as Srila Prabhupada says, it's there. It's there because the soul's nature is always there. But generally it is explained at the stage of ruchi, taste. Ruchi is a stage where we develop spiritual taste. Then that longing starts to really start to manifest. And then asakti, and then bhava. So those stages, ruchi, asakti, bhava, there's an intensification of that taste for Krishna. But before that, it's sporadic. It's sporadic.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Prabhu.
No, you go on. You go on.
Okay. My next question is, to get out of this cycle of life and death, is it that the soul has to attain 100% of the spiritual sense in the material body? Is that the case?
There's one interesting story in the life of Srila Prabhupada. Once he was talking to his Western disciples, and he was saying, you have to become 100% Krishna conscious before you can go back to Godhead.
Okay.
And then he looked at that. No, that's not the end of the story. Then he looked at his disciples, and some of them were looking like pretty dejected, thinking, oh, I'll never make 100%. Then he said, okay, 90%. You have to become 90% Krishna conscious. And still they were looking a bit down. Oh, 90% is a tall order. Then he said 80%, and he still said, they were still looking down. Then he said 75% bus, you'll come back, go back to Godhead. So, Krishna, it is explained how it works. Krishna has two potencies, the Chit potency and the Ladini potency. The Chit potency is the knowledge-giving potency, and the Ladini potency is the pleasure-giving potency. Combined, they are called the Kripa Shakti. So sometimes Krishna, he has the prerogative. When he feels that a devotee has developed a certain sense of longing for him, and he's satisfied with that sense of longing, then at that point in time, he says he bestows his Kripa Shakti on that living entity. And when he bestows that Kripa Shakti on the living entity, is explained in the Nectar of Devotion, two things happen. Firstly, the devotee becomes fully enlightened by dint of the Chit Shakti. And then he becomes fully happy by dint of the Ladini Shakti. And the same thing happens to Krishna. When Krishna bestows this Shakti upon the devotee, he becomes extremely attracted to the devotee. So it's not cut and dry. It's called lolium. Somehow or the other, we have got to develop this spiritual greed. And then it's up to the mercy of Krishna and Guru, where we go beyond that or how far we go. This is a process of mercy. It's not much a process of effort. Effort is certainly there, but the real magic is how much of mercy we can attract of Krishna and his devotee. Therefore, in our forums, we stretch so much this process of book distribution and giving Krishna consciousness, because Krishna says in the Gita, no one is more dearer to him than one who spreads his glories. Krishna has the one who spreads his glories and takes some risks for him. He considers that to be like the little child that's very dependent on him. He does this. Prabhupada gave us this magic formula in this mission of Krishna consciousness that we can take and apply. Hope that answers your question, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. We'll take the 75%. And Prabhupada said that...
he said that. He said 75% bus. Yeah.
And he said he also did that with chanting, the amount of rounds you can do.
Yeah, he made...
So,
Prabhupada says, he said, I got the key to the back door to Goloka
he's
Vrindavan.
amazing
He's got the
guy.
key to the back door to Goloka Vrindavan. Yeah.
Our savior.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Vrindavan Chandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, the living example I was thinking of, like the devotees, when they get illness and do they remember Krishna, what going to happen to them? So living example is Shruti Dharma Prabhu. So it's just recently we have experienced.
Yes.
Like, outwardly you can see that, like he's, like sleeping and all these things, or, not chanting or anything. But inwardly, constantly, he was engaged in Krishna consciousness.
True. Very
and
true.
The greatest thing we have seen that, he is going through the tremendous pain, but never ever saw what you call pain on his face.
Yeah.
So was wondering that, how much, like patience and tolerance he must be getting.
True. Very true.
So wonderful to see him, a living example in front of us.
Very true. And thank you for sharing that example and reminding us. All right, dear devotees, it's a bit far beyond our time. I didn't realize we had gone so far. Thank you so much for your questions and your comments and your participation. All
Thank you for
glories to
your
your service. All glories to
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki
Ki
jai.
Jai.
Thank you for the
Thank you for your
explanation.
Prabhuji for
presence.
wonderful
Thank you.
class.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Prabhuji, thank you for the wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thanks for the explanation. That was
Hare Krishna.